Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the broadcast. We thought we'd do this webinar tonight to help parents understand what we offer at Evoke. But as I started to write this webinar, what I thought was there's also a lot of parent philosophy and our philosophy about parenting that I want to talk about tonight. And I think that's a really good foundation that no matter where you're at in this process, no matter what resources you might take advantage of at Evoke, I think it can be still something that can be helpful to listen to and to learn about and can have application to your parenting no matter what your part in the process is. Why do we offer all the parenting programming that we offer? I love this quote from Parenting from the Inside Out from Siegel and Hartzell, where they say, research in the field of child development has demonstrated that a child's security of attachment to parents is very strongly connected to the parents' understanding of their early life experience, their own early life experiences. And so we know that our lives, our early context affected us as parents. We know we bring that into our marriages, into our child rearing, and our awareness, our ability to look at it, to understand how it impacted us is the first step, is the essential step in us being more effective as a parent, being healthier, being clearer as a parent. So that's really why we do this. And I'll talk as we go tonight about blame and other stigma and other things that we carry around with us when we hear about parent education, because the goal of this curriculum, the goal of our curriculum, is to unburden you. The goal is to liberate you, to empower you in this process, and not to cause the kind of guilt, shame, resistance that oftentimes we experience when we feel judged by somebody else. Let's talk about the parent work and how we think about it at Evoke. We talk about this idea of accountability and awareness without blame. And what I mean by that is you can look at yourself. I can look at myself and say, yeah, I have an impact on my child. I can see that. And I don't have to beat myself up over. In fact, that doesn't do anything really helpful for anybody in this process. I remember a couple of years ago, I was meeting with a prospective parent, a mother, who was considering placing her child in our program. And she was describing the narrative that led up to this meeting. And she said, I met with my therapist, and at first I felt so guilty, so overwhelmed because of the mistakes my ex-husband and I made in our divorce, and was quite clear in my own mind that that was what was causing the problems. And then she said, my therapist reassured me and said, no, it wasn't that. You were a good mother, and started pointing out all the good things. And so she felt better about it. And I had a third opinion. I said, I think it's okay to say, absolutely. Some of the stuff that I do, some of the stuff that you do, impacts our children negatively. It's less than ideal. It's less than nurturing. In fact, the more I do my own work, the more I am aware every day of the ways that I mess up, that I don't come through for my child in the way that they ideally need. But what we can do is we can start to look at that without a lot of guilt, without a lot of shame, right? When we have a firm foundation, a stronger sense of self, when we feel better about ourselves, we're actually more able, more apt to look at our imperfections and address them. If we need to be good, if we need that thought to feel okay, then we're not going to want to look at our issues. I talk about this when parents come to a parent meeting and they say, I did a good job. I worry more about that than when parents say, you know what? I can see that I screwed up and I have things to work on. I've told the story about the father who said to me 4 or 5 weeks in, he spent the first couple of weeks to me telling me how good of a listener he was for his son, because his son complained about that. And 4 or 5 weeks in, after watching a webinar on listening, he said, I realized I have never really listened to my child. I had a parent tell me that 2 weeks ago after a field visit with his son. He said, I think it was the first time in my life where I really listened to my son, and he had never had that thought before. So we can look at and become aware of ourselves, our imperfections, our limitations, even our harmful impact on our children without guilt and blame. But it will require a paradigm shift. It will require some of the work that we talk about in our parent education. I think about this thought too, I was talking to somebody this morning that was considering our program, and I was talking about the parent work that I do. And the reason why I spend time doing the parent work that I do, and I love doing parent work, because I find that sometimes spending 1 hour with a parent is like spending several hours with their child. Because the parent, first of all, often is more motivated to change. The parent has more psychological and intellectual resources sometimes than their children. right? So more motivation, more capacity, um, and that change can last a lifetime. It's not the cause, it's not the cure, but it can absolutely make a difference in the life of the child. And so I love doing parent work. I love the time that I spend with you all on the webinars when I go out and do parent groups. I love those things. When we experience change in our lives in a system, the system tends to bring it back to homeostasis, right? That is the natural inclination. We all resist change. We're uncomfortable with change, even positive change. I use the example of having somebody coach you at a sport like golf or tennis and changing your grip. Your first inclination is to go back to, in fact, under stress, we go back to old habits, what feels most comfortable to us. And that's going to be the same in families. And so we don't want to, as parents, inadvertently reinforce the things that we're trying to encourage to go away. Something simple like this. We teach your children how to feel and how to talk about their feelings. Oftentimes when a child says for the first time assertively how he or she is angry or hurt at their parents can resist that. When the child is talking about missing home, the parent can resist that too, trying to talk them out of it. And I stop them and I say, remember, we're trying to teach them how to feel. Every feeling. And if you try to talk them out of their feeling, the only way that they can express it is symptomatically. So those are just simple examples of the way that homeostasis works in families. I talk about this in my book. I talk about this all the time. Good parenting is its own reward. The outcome of parent education is not well-behaved children. The outcome of parent education is healthy parenting, and that can have a wonderful impact on a child. But good parenting is its own reward. It's better living. It's being a better brother, better sister, better friend, better spouse, better employee, better employer. The same principles are involved. They're universal in our lives. And they have application. I talk about this all the time. They have application to our families, to our profession. I have an 8-year-old and I have a 23-year-old. Somebody was asking me today, would you go back and do things differently knowing what you know now? And I said, I'm doing things differently now with my 8-year-old than when my 23-year-old was 8 years old. Because I'm learning and growing constantly. And I hope that never stops. I hope I continue to grow throughout my life. I don't want to ever arrive, and I don't believe that we ever do arrive. Taking care of parents is affected by the trauma of raising a child with mental health or addiction issues. I like to think of it as support. I remember I was talking to one mother years ago, encouraging her to go to meetings to get support. And she said to me, I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to burden people. I don't want to be around those people. I said, you're calling me in between our phone calls, asking me for help. You need this support. You can't do this on your own. And if you don't figure out how to take care of yourself, you're going to continue to ask your child to take care of you. They're going to need to get better so that you feel okay. And we don't want them to get better for that reason. We want them to get better because it's a better way to live. We don't want them to also be carrying the burden of your serenity, of your sense of overall well-being. So we will take care of you in this process and in many of the things that we offer. Our own evolution with our parent work, we were the first wilderness therapy program to offer where any significant level of parent work and support. It didn't exist in the wilderness therapy community before we opened our program in 1998. And so we immediately started with parent visits in the middle of the program, parent phone calls during the program, and then we've just expanded it over the years. And then when my son went through the program almost 10 years ago, we accelerated and added more features, and we'll continue to add more features that we find helpful. Not all of it is for all of you. And so that's why tonight I want to talk about the various aspects, the electives, if you will, of the parent opportunities at Evoke. We don't want to overwhelm you. I think some parents, I know they share with me, it's like trying to get a drink of water from a fire hose. It's impossible. It's too much. But we want to give you enough, and we want you to find what's right for you and what feels helpful to you. Like I said, in the end, we want you to feel energized by the work and empowered, not deflated or blamed. That's the goal. And oftentimes it's not going to feel that way at first because some of the paradigm shift. That example of this first point that I said today, accountability and awareness without blame. Sometimes at first when we talk that way, you work on accountability and you run it through a filter that is a filter of blame, shame, and guilt, and it's going to feel that way. But you continue with the practice, and after a while, it actually becomes easier not harder, to do this work. So let's start off with parent support groups. I try to do some parent support groups. We try to have some of our therapists do parent support groups all over the country, even in Canada, in places where we have a lot of people. We're willing to have them in other places. We're having one in Atlanta because of a request recently. But we want to make sure that we're going to places where we can be helpful to at least a relatively large group of people, at least a dozen or more. That's our goal, to provide that kind of treatment. And these are 2-hour groups in the evening usually. In Los Angeles, it's on a Sunday afternoon, early evening, so that parents can avoid the traffic. But usually it's a weeknight. It's an evening for a couple of hours. And it's an opportunity for you to tell your story, not your child's story, your story, and listen to other stories. And we understand that the child's story is part of the context of your story, but it's not your story, right? I talk about that at all the parent meetings, is we don't want to forget you. It's the old analogy of the oxygen mask in the airplane. We want you to secure your mask first, to work on you first. That will have positive outcomes with your child. But this process of sharing, of connecting, of networking with other parents is about getting clear about you. That's the best thing you can do for your child, is to get more and more clear about your story and how you relate to your child's problems. It's a place to share experience, strength, and hope with others. It's a place to hear that from others. It's a place to find out what works for other people. We ask you to share wisdom if you're having success with something, or if you've overcome something, we can celebrate it and learn from it, and also to ask for some wisdom. We ask you in these meetings to share from the first person, not from the second or third person. It sounds like this when you share from the second person. It sounds like this. You know, when you wake up in the morning and you're tired and you don't want to deal with anything and you can't find, that's the second person. When the first person is shared, it sounds like this. When I wake up in the morning and I'm tired and I'm frustrated and I'm overwhelmed, this is what goes on for me. So we ask you to share about you. We ask you not to give advice to each other. You can talk about what has worked for you in similar circumstances, but to be clear, it might not work for them. And then, of course, we're going to also spend some time. We've been asked to create themes around these meetings, so I'm doing that now. And in these meetings, we're going to be offering some tools and some skills and relating them to your stories. And so it's about half being in a place to tell and listen to other stories, and half a place to work on some skills and some tools. That's the 2-hour meetings that we have all over the country at various times. Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, those are our most consistent sites, Chicago being less than the other 3. But those are the ones we do. We've also done Seattle, like I said. We've done Denver. We've done Houston. We've done other cities by request also. And we're starting to do Toronto because we get such good attendance there. Parent workshops. This is something where you come out to one of our 2 programs and you participate in a 2-day workshop. This is something that is for current families. We've found it to be more effective for current families who are still in the process. So it's not for alumni families. It can be combined with a field visit if your child's therapist agrees with the timing clinically. If it's clinically appropriate, you can ask your therapist that, and that can be a very good combination for you to go through that weekend workshop and then go out to the field the next day. That can be very effective. You're going to get to meet some of the field staff. You're going to have some outdoor activities as much as we can to give you some experience with the wilderness and the experiential therapy we do. We're going to assign formal alumni, sometimes students, sometimes parents, to give a talk. It's more structured. It's not just a simple sharing of their story, but actually giving their story and the lessons learned in a formal way. So those are going to happen. They have some of the same benefits of that networking part of the parent support group, with more emphasis on the following: more skill building and role playing. There are going to be more experiential activities, like I said, getting a taste for what your child is experiencing. You're going to have lectures from our therapists and staff, lessons also, and group discussions around those topics. And you're going to learn to feel, learn to communicate. There's going to be a vulnerable process and a multifamily process. So it's going to be groups anywhere from 8 to 40 people we have at these. So you're going to be spending a couple of days talking about and learning together. And people rave about these experiences. So that's what the parent workshop looks like. I'm showing here on the screen a sample schedule, and I emphasize sample. This is what it looks like, and we're going to tweak these each time just a little bit based on the therapist who's presenting and what they're saying. But it gives you an idea about how those couple of days go. You can also find this on our website too. So, like I said, discussions, lessons, role plays, bow drill fire making, having a picnic in the park, mindfulness, all of those things are going to be a part of it. Um, and then I want to talk about intensives. Intensives, first of all, I'll talk about the psychology behind intensives. I have a few quotes here. If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. That's from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The idea is if we can look at our history, our own history, if we can develop a compassion toward our own story and toward our own baggage that we bring to this most important thing called parenting, then we can heal it, right? If it's just about us being a bad parent, or you can choose any judgmental name, if it's just about that, that doesn't heal anything. So it's an exercise in developing more compassion for the self, more understanding and insight for the self, and why you bring to the table what you bring to the table. The founder of psychodrama and group therapy taught this, that we are wounded in relationships and we are healed in relationships. It's not, books are fine, webinars are great, lessons are great, but the deep healing comes often in relationship with others, and we connect through our pain. And if we are held, psychologically speaking, if we are held in high esteem, in compassion, in love and caring, that is the context where we heal. If we're held in judgment, if we're met with impatience, with disgust, with repulsion, right? If we get that kind of response from people, we don't heal. We cover up, we hide, we feel shame. So the therapeutic relationship at these very intimate intensives is as much a part of the healing as anything. It's a 4-day experience, 3 nights. Here's another quote from Siegel and Hartzell. Research has clearly demonstrated that our children's attachment to us will be influenced by what happened to us when we were young if we do not come to process and understand those experiences. So that's the quote from before, talking about how if we don't understand it, it's not what happened to us, but if we don't understand it, if we don't come to understand it, make sense of it, then the impact of our children is going to be poor, less clear attachment, less healthy attachment. The more we can understand it, the more capable we are of providing healthy attachment. And healthy attachment is one of the strongest contributions we can make to our child's esteem and resiliency. I love this picture. I just wanted to share it because I think it's a fantastic image that we get isolated, right? And there's a part of us that's longing for connection to our children, to each other. There's a little child inside of us with their wounds and their harm, and yet our shame and our wounds pull us away from that. And so I just love this image. This was at Burning Man a couple of years ago. We have a few different kinds of intensive. First of all, we have a Heroic Journeys intensive. That's for families. It can be private or it can be multifamily, which is scheduled. Private is just scheduled whenever works for you and for us. And so you can have either one of those. And both have their benefits. I think a lot of people lean toward the private one, but what we know about multifamilies is that we often do get as much work out of watching another family work as we get about doing our own work. Also, if there are children involved, they can connect to each other and listen to each other in a very powerful way. So Heroic Journeys, private or multifamily that are on the schedule. Finding You is the individual, any age of adult, any age, from young adult to grandparents is appropriate. Around 5 to 7 people at these. And when sometimes we've had half young adults and half older adults. It's fantastic because they learn from each other. Right? They can teach each other something because of their different perspectives. We do inner child work, so going back to find out what was lost, what was buried, where you're still hurting, how those themes are still coming up in your life today can be very powerful. Looking at the family of origin, like I described. We use psychodrama, which is kind of role playing old relationships. We use other experiential activities, drawing, art, physical activities to bring that out. There's a menu of activities that we have. It's not so easy to do a schedule with this one um, because we change it for each group. We have this menu of options and we change it for each group. The bulk of it is doing the psychodrama. That's the deep work. But then there are mindfulness activities and experiential activities, and sometimes talk and lessons become a part of that also, anchoring that in concepts that you can take with you. We do mindfulness and meditation training every day because we know that that helps with anxiety, depression. We know that that helps with getting grounded and learning how to feel. It's a skill that you can take away with you, that you can maybe be inspired to start on your own. I think the intensives can be a therapy springboard, meaning they can be for people that are new to therapy, or it can be a therapy accelerator, which means that you're very experienced at therapy. I've seen them be equally effective, and I've seen clients at our intensives who are in both places walk away with exactly what they needed and wanted from the experience. You're going to be working on things like codependency, your own trauma, relationships in your life, current relationships with the spouses. You don't have to be a parent. Obviously, if young adults are there, you don't have to be a parent. Half of our clients have not been evoke families or parents. They hear about us some other ways and they come and do this work. But overall, you're learning about your family of origin. You're learning about the patterns, the rules, the unspoken agendas, the story that you've accepted as true about yourself, all of that, and how all of those things are affecting your relationship with your child who's struggling, or your marriage, or anybody in your life. The one qualification I say is that the person who comes with an idea that they have some work. They don't need to know what it is. They don't even have to be clear about what the work, but know that I have some work that's out there for me to do, and I want to do it. It's not an intervention. It's not a place to bring your child to try to get them to go to therapy or to come to the Evoke Wilderness program. It's not that. They don't. Children don't have to be as motivated as parents. When we have children, we play more games and we have more experiential activities. It's harder for a child, for a 13-year-old. We want a teenager above. It's hard for them to sit in therapy for as long as a parent or an adult might want to. So we include some of those other things. And they don't have to be, like I said, as motivated as the parents. Um, it's vulnerable work, like it's deep work. There will be tears. It will be uncomfortable in the sense that you're opening up. But it's an incredibly, I always think about this. Whenever I walk into our cabin in Park City or to our Oasis down in southern Utah where we do some of the outdoor ones, I always walk in and I notice this place is going to feel so much different in 4 days. It's going to feel, and it always does. It takes on kind of a sacred feeling because the things that were opened up. And just, I always think about when I meet clients, sometimes I'm meeting some of you for the first time, and I think it's going to be so amazing to know you in 3-4 days from now because it's going to be so different. So it's a wonderful, wonderful process that creates a special place. Right now, these programs are run by me. We will expand them so that other therapists are running them. And then two to three of my staff. They help with some of the exercises. They facilitate or co-facilitate some of the exercises. Sometimes they also help with logistics and cooking and so forth. So they're there kind of as my co or assistant therapeutic staff. And we do it in Park City and the Oasis. We've also done it on location for families. Families that have us come to their vacation homes, or we can rent a cabin or someplace near you. We don't like to do it in the family's home, their primary home. So we can do those for custom, set up in a custom way. The Oasis is the yurts and the wilderness program we have down at Entrada in southern Utah. And that can be great for families. We do those in the spring and in the fall because there's a lot more outdoor activities available to us out there. And so we take hiking, we sleep outside if you want to, things like that. And so that can be more of an adventure experience for families. And then I want to talk about Pursuits. This is a different program. This is an adventure-based program. These are guided trips by our staff. And it's what's really cool about it is the goal is to have fun on these. The goal isn't necessarily to create a therapeutic experience. But we know that by participating in some adventure experiences as a family and having fun, that sometimes some therapeutic stuff can come out, some inspiring stuff can come out of it. So when you have guides who also have, and all of ours do, experience as field instructors, as field staff in our wilderness therapy program, you have somebody capable of making that connection between the fun and the team building that you're all experiencing and some of the principles. So it's therapy light, sober fun, family fun. We've had parents do all three of these actually, where they go to the wilderness therapy program, then they go to an intensive, then they go to a pursuits. Right? But they're different things. This is more with an emphasis in fun and spending time together. And you still have that support, that safety net of having somebody that can help you through maybe difficult communication or difficult moments, or just help you make the most out of it. These can be scheduled trips or private customized trips. We have two types right now where we do them for young adults or for families. So we don't have one for adolescents just yet, but that might be soon coming. They can be with or without a therapist. The default is without a therapist. That's the default. A therapist is not a part of it. But we have scheduled them where a therapist can come out into the experience for a couple of days, somewhere in the process. We also just started a new program called Mindful Transitions. In Mindful Transitions, so often we've had parents ask us, can we spend some time doing something fun with our child, maybe going on a trip in between, taking a vacation? We know we don't want them to come home, but can we go somewhere? And so we've created this bridge program, this mindful transition, so you can schedule the pursuits group, the pursuits guides, to take you and your family off to do something fun out in the wilderness, fishing, canoeing, canyoneering, hiking, all the various places that we go. So you can do something like that in between. And that's just a new program we came out with this last week. Locations include but aren't limited to Utah, British Columbia, Guatemala, Peru, Nepal, and of course many others. So it's a worldwide program, and we can set up, and if you go to our website, you can see all the various places and the different kinds that we have. So what are the take-home principles, more than just me telling you what services we have? The take-home message is about our family work and about what we believe about parents and their relationships to their children. A lot of parents look at this work initially and have the reaction, this isn't my fault. Why is there so much about me? Why so much parent work? And the answer is because if you want to participate with your child in a more meaningful way in their life going forward, this is the work that we all need to do, whether your child needs a wilderness program or not. Everybody could benefit from this, from all of this work. It's unfortunate that only those of us whose children have the kinds of struggles that our children have, it's unfortunate that we're the only ones often to take advantage of these things, because people's lives could be so much richer. I had a student, I was out watching the Wilderness play last week in New York City, just opened in New York City. And one of the clients that was portrayed in the play came up to me and he said, everybody should go to Wilderness, whether they have problems or not. So this is work for all. It's just life work. It's like going to the gym. We try to offer support without the judgment. We don't do a lot of simple advice giving because we don't want to impose our truth on you. We want you to discover your truth. We want you to find it inside of yourself. It's there. And more importantly, we try to help you get rid of the voices, of the noise that get in the way of you knowing and finding your truth. That way, you go away from us, go away from the experience with an enduring source of truth, which is you. Our program, our parenting, is about healing everybody and not fixing people, but basically creating an environment where you're more capable, more apt to find your truth. Everything we do is experientially based. We have, of course, things like webinars that are lectures. We have lessons at some of these things. I teach some skills at the various things that we do at the parent support groups and the intensives, but the core component is experiential. I like this quote from a book called Finding Human by J.D. Gill. She says, but especially with regard to emotional matters, description may not be the most effective route to take. Here, it may be preferable to evoke the emotion or the experience. And that's our thought process. I looked up the word evoke just today in the dictionary. I've looked it up before, but it said to call up or produce memories or feelings, to evoke a memory, to elicit or draw forth. The whole philosophy is evoke is that I don't know your truth. I know principles and ideas, but I don't know your truth. But I'm going to help create a process where you can discover your truth and discover what's getting in the way in a given moment, why you don't know what to do. Right? That's the important question. Why don't you know? Why don't I know what to do? What gets in the way of that? And sometimes it's information, sometimes it's a principle or a technique, but oftentimes it's this stuff in our lives. So much of the idea of enlightenment is about unlearning things. Sometimes the therapists that I work with, the staff that I work with, we have to unlearn them, unteach them some of the things that they believe in order to do this work this way. Creating experiences to help you find your truth is at the core of what we do. More than anything, when you come to these, come ready to work. If nothing else, you'll have empathy for the work that is being asked of your child by you and by us. And there's almost no greater gift that you can give to your child than to say, you know what? I'm a project also. I need help also. I don't have all the answers. Sometimes I pretend that I do. Sometimes I try to convince you that I do, but I don't. Sometimes I'm just as stuck as you are. I might not be as symptomatic as you are or demonstrative, but I'm still stuck in areas of my life. That is a fantastic gift to offer your child. And when they learn about you doing all of this, they feel that. It invites them into their work more when you go into your work more. Simply pushing against and power struggling with them is less inviting for them to do their work. I have somebody who commented, like I said, I don't have a moderator this evening, so I'm just going to read your comments below and then respond to them. I have a client that says, I attended the Finding You Intensive last year at the Oasis. I highly recommend this to other parents. It's like getting 6 months or more of therapy in a few days. This type of work has been the biggest catalyst to my healing and understanding the need for parallel work and healing. I was told early on in my son's stay that I needed to be different. The home needed to be different. It really is a parallel process, and the intensive was a great benefit to this process. I want to do another one. More layers of healing. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. I feel the same way about my own work and about getting to do this work. I'm so lucky that I get to have a job where I get to do this because it reminds me every time I talk, every time I teach, every time I facilitate, it reminds me of the things in my life that I need to be working on. All right, folks, here are the upcoming intensives and workshops. I've described what they are, so I don't need to say any more about them. You can contact Gail at evoketherapy.com for the next workshop, or you can contact the admissions team at intensives@evoketherapy.com for the next intensive. The Finding You one in November is full. Here are the 12-step support groups coming up. I've also added NAMI to that list. It's not a 12-step support group technically, but they do offer free classes and resources for you, so you can look at your local chapter by going to NAMI.org. We want families to go to 6 12-step support group meetings while their child is with us. If you haven't done it now and you're already gone, start now, start immediately. Here are the upcoming parent support groups over the next 4 or 5 weeks or so. Los Angeles, the Bay Area, New York City, Atlanta, and Toronto. Contact Stephanie at evoketherapy.com to RSVP, or if you have more questions. All the addresses are there. Look forward to seeing you. I'll be at all of those. Gregory is running the one in New York City. I'll be running the rest of them. And then, of course, all of these are now available on podcasts. And if you have an Android device, you can download the SoundCloud app and search Evoke Therapy programs also. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook. The Parent Alumni Foundation page can also be found on Facebook, and then our blog. Here's the Pursuits trip. My book is available on Amazon and for audio. And then go to the Parent Alumni Foundation book page, and books that are purchased there on Amazon through the Amazon Smiles program go to the charity, the foundation, to help people who can't afford treatment. All right, folks, are there any other questions before I close up this evening? I guess not. The next webinar will be for fathers and sons. So fathers and sons, next Tuesday If you have a co-parent in your life who is that, if you want to watch it, of course, also. But if you have a father or co-parent in your life, you can go ahead and nudge them and send them the reminder. We'll be sending those reminders out, of course, a couple of days ahead of time. Anyway, upcoming will be Tuesday, November 8th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, Fathers and Sons. Look forward to that. I enjoy all of these webinars. I hope they are a helpful point of contact to all of you. Have a great evening, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care.